Greetings, neighbors. This is Reflections, the show sponsored by the Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where we, all of us together, do God's work with human hands. My name's Gregory Waldrop, and I'm the pastor at Fountain Avenue United Methodist Church, and I'm your co-host for this Reflection show. Our other co-host is Karen Winkel from the United Church of Paducah. Welcome, Karen.
Good to see you, Gregory. Good. It's good to have you with us. And with us today is Jennifer Johnson Hunt, who is we'll say a licensed massage therapist, yes, and a Reiki practitioner. Reiki may not be something that folks in our audience are familiar with, and so Jennifer's here to talk about Reiki and the way in which body and spirit come together. You know, in the Christian tradition, we're a little bit torn, I think, because we do have wisdom that teaches that the body is a temple, and yet we also struggle with what Paul teaches, where there's kind of a division between spirit and flesh. And so Jennifer's here to help us understand how spirit and flesh can come together in life-giving, healing ways. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for coming and sharing your gift today.
Well, and thank you for this opportunity, because I don't often get to talk about this. First off, Reiki is, and it is said Reiki, just like it sounds.
But it's spelled differently,
It's
right?
totally spelled different. If you want to look it up, it's R-E-I-K-I. But it's said Reiki. It's a Japanese word. It does come, the study does come from the East. And the word itself means universal life force, which all of us believe in. The thing that I usually have to explain to people, though, is it's not near as obscure as it sounds. The body wants to be healthy. We have a miraculous thing here that we were given. I mean, our heart beats, everything happens, and we don't have to think about it.
Amazing.
And when we start getting a little bit of a bug, immediately things start working to fix it. And so just the body in itself, God gave us a wonderful gift. He didn't give us a little shack to live in. We have definitely got a temple. And what things like Reiki, and I put that in the same categories as things like yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, things that work with the natural energy in the body, helps the body remember how to take care of itself. And it's really not near as scary as some people, they're like, oh, I don't know. When I started doing Reiki 7 years ago, and people would sometimes act like I was going to swing a chicken over their head or something. And when it's explained, it's really actually much more traditional than it sounds. Hospice, Corsairs, they're both using Reiki. Mayo Clinic has a Reiki person on staff, a Reiki master teacher. And let's see, some of the other, like Vanderbilt, their cancer center has a Reiki person on staff. A lot of your birthing centers, because it just helps calm the body to a place that it can remember what it's supposed to do.
Right. I mean, there's a real sense in which, as I understand it, and I don't know Reiki particularly well, but generally our whole turn to the East with regard to that matter is because in some ways we haven't in the church looked at the depths of our heritage, our history. We have a pretty strong Eastern tradition in the church of contemplatives, of people who have used some of the same kind of things that these things that you say, that you've mentioned already, that utilize those same kind of energies, those same kind of understanding of the mind-body connection, spirit-body connection. And I think again, the fact that we've felt the need in the culture to turn east is an indictment for the church for not having held up and offered some of these things that are really have been a part of the ancient practice of the church.
And at the center of the Christian faith is a healer.
Yes.
Right.
And I think, reflecting on my own experience growing up in the church, we all kind of knew that, but I don't think we ever even asked ourselves the question, what might have been happening. We just knew that it happened. And that was kind of a closed door. Not that we were afraid of that. I just don't know that it ever occurred to us that something was available to Jesus
Right.
that could be available to us. Maybe that was.
Well, and I don't claim in any way to be a Bible scholar, but I do know that he said, "You will do all that I do and more."
Mm-hmm.
And I think the word healing is a word I'm very careful with, because especially back in the 30s and 40s when the tent shows would come through, and there was a lot of shysters, a lot of people just trying to prey on poor, sick people. And this whole idea of healing got kind of a bad name because people had misrepresented it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a mother in this world that doesn't know what healing touch is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every person who has a mother, who had a caregiver who could kiss a boo-boo, there is definitely a healing in healing
Right.
touch.
Or who would take Vic salve and, like at my house, and spread it on your chest, and I don't know whether it was the actual physical spreading or whether it was the salve. I don't know which was the
the
most
attention
healing.
and the care.
Yeah.
And when I teach Reiki, and I teach it to caregivers like nurses and therapists and like that, but I've also taught it to homemakers and lawyers and accountants and secretaries. The first thing in the Reiki tradition is that you heal yourself and find a calming place for yourself of health. Come back to your roots. I think the body naturally wants to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that as Christians, we do know that our body is a temple, sacred place. God made this, in the old saying in the 70s, God doesn't make junk. This is a sacred place, and it knows wonderful things. If we'll just come back to our roots of, and that's what we're doing. You mentioned the Eastern philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
We're really getting back to nutrition, good water, good rest, quiet time, prayer time, exercise.
Physical movement.
I always tell my clients when they're coming off the table, because I talk to them about breathing and drinking a lot of water, I say God gave us the two most important elements that we need for our physical health, water and air, and they're basically free. So we're getting back to that. And I think as a culture, we're getting back to more of the holistic. The word holistic used to be scary to people now. Now it's almost a breath of fresh air for people of, oh, you're not going to give me needles or pills. I tend to be middle of the way. I'm a cancer survivor, and the medical facilities were wonderful to me, and I'm very grateful for them. So there is definitely a place for everything. But I don't believe the answer is always taking a pill. You know, what can you do for yourself on a personal level? People ask me, is Reiki a spiritual path, or is it a science or a medicine? It can be all three. I have students who take it from both places. Scientists are now finding that we do have an energy field, and when it gets little quirks in it, it does affect our health. I believe in the next 10 years, we'll have a machine, much like an X-ray machine, that'll be able to check your energy field. There's already similar things like that. We just haven't quite put them into the medical practice yet. And so you can go down that path of just the science of it, and it's a lot of science that backs it up. I mean, when Mayo Clinic has a Reiki person on staff at all times, what's that tell you? I saw something on a channel that I wish I'd been able to tape. It was on the Discovery Channel, I believe, and there was a surgeon who has taken Reiki, and he does it for all of his patients before he does surgery. And they said, how does it work? And he said, I have no idea. And he really wasn't into the science or the spiritual path either way. He just said, I know my patients heal faster when they go through this process. For other people, it is a spiritual path for them, because when you get to know yourself, that's one of the first places of getting to closer to God. So it's whatever you want it to be, but the biggest thing is it's not scary. My saying is, this isn't weird, and don't make it weird. I talk to students before they start working with me, and if they're wanting to be different, to be separate, to be special, that's really not what this is about. This is about connecting. This is about going and touching someone and sharing your energy. The way I explain it to people, if they're really concerned about it, is I first asked them, what their belief system is. And I had a lady the other day, and she told me what church she went to. And I said, so do you feel like you're healthy? And she said, oh, yes, definitely. And I said, so would it be hard to believe that God would say, here, let me share some of mine with you, through that healthy person to the person who wasn't feeling their health? And she's like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world.
I believe as well that I have a friend actually who sort of thought this, said it out loud the first time, and he really does believe, he's a physician and a minister, and he really does believe that very soon, if not already, I think it's still already one of the sort of informal ways we pick churches, our church home, or we feel connected to a church home, is by how healthy that church keeps us and helps us to maintain. And I think there's something real about that. I know you were talking about Reiki meaning this compelling life force. I'm reminded in the Old Testament of that great Hebrew word, ruach, which maybe even is probably from a similar Eastern word, ruach and Reiki being sort of similar. It's that whole notion of this life force that God breathes into humanity. And in the Greeks, they use the word psyche for that same kind of notion, the word we pick up and use for psychology. But if they're really talking about that compelling, motivating, energizing life force, the Bible knows it and knows it well.
Well, and one of the things that I find is when people learn Reiki, they say they feel like, that connection that like a mother and child has. I know my mother lives 900 miles away, and she knows, she knows when to pick up the phone and call me. It's just a connection that mother and children have. And they say that they feel like they have more of that connection to strangers, almost like, I can feel your pain. And I think that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to take care of each other. And I think it's something that can be compelling because it does sound complicated, and it does sound different when you put it in that form, but when you put it in brass tacks, it's just good common sense of how we want to take care of each other.
Yeah.
I know that there are several ways to be the recipient of Reiki, and that can happen within the context of massage, but it also can just be a treatment unto itself. For those who are unfamiliar with Reiki, what might be their experience of receiving Reiki? What is that like?
Well, when usually, and you fully clothed, that's the first question everyone asks since I'm a massage therapist. And it's just a matter of some different hand positions. And usually what you will feel, you'll be touched in different places. Usually what you'll feel is a sense of calm. The first time I had Reiki was right after I had cancer. And I'd had 2 surgeries in 3 months, a little bit of depression, a little bit of despair, what's next? Am I going to live? All those type things, not to mention just being sick. And the lady asked me if she could, and I was like, is it going to hurt? And she said no, and I was, knock yourself out. At this point you've been poked and prodded. And I just remember feeling very, what's the feeling? And other than that, not much. And as the day went on, I realized I was in a good mood for the first time in a while, from the drugs and the surgeries and all that. I had to go back and try this again and see, because I'm kind of skeptical. You got to show me this stuff. And I got the same result again. I knew that in my massage books, in my massage school, it hadn't been mentioned, but not explained well. And so then I started researching it, and then found a teacher, and it's like, I have to know more about this. And then one thing led to another. It's like, I've got to teach everybody I know how to do this. So a website that I recommend for many people in the church community is christianreiki.org. And all it tells is basic questions that Christians have about, how does this fit in to my beliefs? How does this fit into what my Bible says? How does this fit in to what my core feelings on these type of matters are. And it gives you some points of reference in the Bible that if not to alter your opinion, to at least explain it, where that opinion comes from.
Very interesting, because the whole issue of touch in our culture particularly is such a really growing edge issue with a lot of people in a lot of ways, and the healing touch is such an important
Yes, it is.
thing to reclaim and to restore to its value.
Well, and you asked me what people feel when they get it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a session. It can be, I have a few nurses who tell me that when they go to take people's pulse, that they do Reiki while they're touching them. Sometimes when I just hug someone, the one thing I noticed is after I started doing Reiki, it seems like people want to touch me more, and I think it's because I'm touching them more. But it can be something very subtle. But typically it is a treatment, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just something as gentle as putting your hand on somebody's shoulder.
Right. Right.
I think we think of gentleness often as light or insubstantial, but I think that my experience of Reiki is that there is a tremendous amount of power in it, but that power is very gentle, and we don't think of those two things coming together like that. But it's also when someone is giving a Reiki treatment, it's not that person is intending something specific for that person.
Just their highest good.
So that the person who is providing that support, that helpful healing support, is does not have an agenda for that person. And I think that is part of, because we all know, I think, when someone wants something for us, even when that's wonderful. And I think part of what is healing is the freedom within us to enter into something in a way that is appropriate for us, whether we fully understand that or not.
Whether it's a conscious part of our lives.
Yeah, and one of the first, we don't have a lot of rules, but one of the first intents of Reiki, the person receiving it must want healing. You must have their permission, and they must want healing. Sometimes people unconsciously don't want healing. Sometimes their sickness is serving them in maybe even an unknown kind of a way.
Enjoying their bad health.
Yeah. I've had clients who the only way they get any attention, the only time their kids come see them, that's when they're sick. So they unconsciously, it's not an intentional thing, but their body goes, oh, I get love when I'm sick. Then let's be sick. And so I think the fact that it is not something that takes over, you have to want it, you have to allow it, and it's to the highest good. I don't have to have an X-ray machine or an MRI machine. It goes where it needs to go. It does because the body knows. All I'm doing is calming that energy field down so the body can go, oh, that's what we need. And people say, now where does God come into that? God comes into that because I think that's a gift that we were given with this miraculous body that knows my heart's supposed to be beating right now, and I'm supposed to be breathing so many pieces of oxygen a second.
Right. It's part of restoring the design of it all, the interrelatedness of everything to it.
And I think as a culture we're finally starting to realize, we were discussing earlier among ourselves, getting older. We're starting to acknowledge that getting older does not have to mean getting sick. Getting older does not have to mean losing your health. We're coming back to a place of health is natural, sickness is not. And we have so many tools to use. And a lot of them are coming from the East, but actually if you go back to the beginning of this country where they ate real food and real water, uncontaminated water, and they worked hard, and they spent time in prayer, and they spent time in fellowship, that's what makes the body complete.
Well, and one of the people that I have read that has pointed me in this direction repeatedly, and really is a trusted resource, at least from my own life, is a fellow by the name of Morton Kelsey. and he's got a whole series of books about spiritual gifts and all that sort of thing. He's out of the Catholic and Episcopal traditions, but he does a wonderful job with the whole interrelatedness of health and life and touch and the whole connection between scientific health and the health that can be scientifically verified and all of these more qualitative health activities, things that you can't really spoon out. They don't have a dose to them. They have
Yeah. Well, probably one of the most common things that happens is the night before I teach a class, somebody that's signed up for the class will call me and say, "Are you sure I can do this?" And my answer to them is, "Can you do this?" Then you can do that. All of us have a healing touch ability. Like I said, every mother knows how to touch her child. Mm-hmm. If you've ever helped somebody who was going through a grieving process, that hug, that touch, all of us have that. And it's not something that is given to a chosen few. I think as children of God, we were all given that ability. Yeah. It's just, would you like to acknowledge it?
Now, I know my experience with Reiki has been receiving it. Is there a way for a person to do self-Reiki?
Yes, and I'm so glad you asked that, because as a matter of fact, when you first learn, that is the utmost of importance. You Reiki yourself. As a Reiki practitioner, I Reiki myself every day, sometimes several times a day. I Reiki'd myself before I came in here so that, I would breathe and not be nervous talking. Yes, you Reiki yourself as a regular thing. You just, like in prayer, you pray for others, but you pray for yourself too. Mm-hmm. You can't be a wounded healer. And so in taking care of yourself, it helps you to take care of others. I also teach some workshops at the massage school in Mayfield, and something I encourage them is, you've got to take care of yourself if you're going to take care of others. When you're the mother, you've got to take care of you when you take care of the kids. In the planes, I always tell my students, they tell you that if you're with a small child, you put the oxygen mask on yourself, mm-hmm. then you take the child. That feels so wrong. You always do your children first. But if you're laid out in the aisle, there's no help for that child. The same with a Reiki practitioner. Matter of fact, I have several people who never have any intention on actually practicing in any form except for their immediate family and themselves. I've actually had people who never intend to use it on anybody but themselves. Mm-hmm. And it usually goes farther than that, but that's fine too. Because in making yourself healthy, when one of us are healthy, we're all just a little bit healthier.
So it's you Reiki yourself, is that just sort of a meditative practice? Is it
It's a physical. It's a physical. It's getting quiet, and touching your body in particular areas that are considered sensitive to the energy force, and just literally just being quiet with yourself. So yes, it could be considered a type of meditation. It could be considered a type of prayer. It could be considered a quiet time. Mm-hmm. It's also something that a lot of times in our culture we have a hard time with. Yeah. A lot of. I read a long time ago that we are all here to teach what we're worst at. And so I got to thinking, what am I worst at? And I realized stillness. Not only was I not very good at it, I didn't have a lot of respect for it. Mm-hmm. I was a busy woman. And I realized that how much comfort there is in stillness. Yeah. And we are told so many times in the Bible, to be still, to be quiet. And so, yes, it's very much like that. If you saw me doing it, you would say, she looks like she's taking a nap. Mm-hmm.
Morton Kelsey was told a story about a fellow that he knew that had been ordered by their doctor to go and be quiet for the weekend. And he came back and said, Doc, it didn't help a bit. And he said, well, how were you quiet? He said, well, I went into my study, I closed the door, I turned the music on, I got a book out, I put tobacco in my pipe. And he said, well, no wonder. He said, you had so many distractions. There was nothing quiet about what you did. You may not have spoken any words, but you were surrounded by, and really you added stimuli into your life. He said, now go back and try it again, and this time be with yourself. In fact, he said, if you aren't able to be with yourself, how do you expect anybody else to be with you?
Yeah, I say that to a lot of my single friends who I say, why would somebody want to spend a Saturday night with you alone when you don't want to spend a Saturday night with you alone? Same concept.
Right.
I think as a culture we're a little afraid of stillness and quiet. And with most of the healing modalities that go along with that, that's always involved. Finding your own place of calm.
We're just so quickly running out of time, and I want to be sure that our viewers have at their fingertips some resources. You mentioned a website.
www.christianreiki.org, and that would be Christian, and Reiki is spelled REIKI.org. Or if they want some information from me in particular, best way to reach me is email. That it would be JJ LMT, as in licensed massage therapist, and let's see, at bellsouth.net. And I do check that regularly, and we'll get back with you as soon as I can. If you have questions, if you need reference material, and I'm always eager to talk to anyone about any questions they might have.
And you also practice this,
Yes.
and they could call you. What do you?
Yes, I have a studio in my home where I do massage and Reiki, and my number is 270-534-4844. I'm right in Lone Oak.
Great.
And you teach classes in your home?
Yes, I teach.
You can enter in with folks at whatever level they would like.
I teach the classes right in my home, serve them lunch, they spend the day with me, and then there's like a mentorship to go with it, so that they keep, as they go, as they have questions, as things come up, they always have me to come back to.
Anything else? We've got a minute, so.
Mostly I would like the people in the area to know there is a very large Reiki community here. I personally have over 50 students, and there's other people who have moved to this area. There's Reikis all over the world. There's thousands and thousands and thousands in this country. But there really is a large community here.
Great.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jennifer. And we'll just trust that the Spirit moves a few of our viewers and tickles something or moves something.
I would love to share with them.
Great. Great.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us today, Gregory, Jennifer Johnson Hunt, and thank you for joining us here at Reflections. Do join us however you can, whenever you can, with Paducah Cooperative Ministry in doing God's work with human hands. Shalom.
Shalom.